You're in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics at the studios in First Star Logistics, and it's time for Keys to the Game. We got Birds against Tigers. Come on now. Tigers should prevail. Very interesting to see how the seasons have unfolded. Exactly the same. The Falcons are 3-3. The Bengals are 3-3. Who's going to go over 500 for the first time all year long? Because both teams lost their first two games, won their next two, lost one, won one. Haven't gone on any kind of a streak. They've had the exact same pattern to the 3-3 start to their respective seasons. Let's start off with a very unusual factoid. This one's very, very interesting. 406 teams in the Super Bowl era gave up 228 yards rushing, at least 26 points, and lost a turnover battle. Of those 406 teams, the record, 4 wins, 402 losses. Until Sunday, the Bengals are the 5th team to win. Now the record's 5 and 402. It's interesting to give up 228 yards rushing or more, 26 points or more, lose the turnover battle, and still win the game. As you can see, 5 teams have done it to win, have happened to them, and they still won. They've lost 402 times. The Bengals, ironically, are one of the first 4 teams that it happened against them. They rushed for over 228 yards. They scored 26 points or more, and they won the turnover battle and lost to the Cleveland Browns in 1971. So of the 407 teams, the Bengals appear on both sides of it. They're one of 5 that won the game, and they're one of 402 that lost the game. Very, very interesting. Keys to who is going to be 4-3. Big difference between 4-3 and 3-4. Third down. Last week against New Orleans, third down was huge. The Saints were second in the NFL, allowing less than 30% conversion on third down. That's 3 out of every 10. The Bengals converted 60%, 6 out of 10. That was big in the outcome of the football game. Joe Mixon had a 9-yard touchdown pass on 3rd and goal from the 9-yard line. Third down red zone touchdowns are destructive to a defense. 3rd and 8 at the 19-yard line. Joe Burrow, under pressure. They blitz a couple of defensive backs off of both ends, both sides. And LC gets just enough of that blitzing corner where Joe Burrow can work his way up the pocket, manipulate the pocket, and find a little lane between the center and the guard. And once he breaks the line of scrimmage, from the right hash mark to left sideline was all green pasture, wide open, 19-yard scramble touchdown. Third down in the red zone, third down red zone touchdown on 3rd and 8 at the 19-yard line. Another killer to a defensive football team. So that was huge. Let's talk about red zone in general. On this New Orleans team last week, they only allowed 1 out of 3 red zone possessions to end up in a touchdown. That's 33.3%, 1 out of 3, tied for second best in the NFL. New Orleans said, all right, we're going to be able to hang in there because we're not going to allow you to get 7. We're going to make you kick for 3. The Bengals offense goes 3 for 3. They get in the red zone 3 times. They convert every single one of them, 100%. New Orleans offense, they had scored 4 out of every 5 possessions in the red zone, 80%, second best in the National Football League. The Bengals hold them in the red zone 4 times. They score 1 touchdown in 5 red zone opportunities, 20%. Bottom line is the third down and red zone execution won the football game last week against the Saints. The Bengals had 3 possessions in the red zone. They scored touchdowns every time, 21 points. The Saints had 5 possessions in the red zone. They scored 1 touchdown, kicked 4 field goals, 19 points. Bengals had 2 less possessions and scored 2 more points than the Saints did. When you start only getting 3 instead of 7, makes a big difference, particularly when the other team getting 7 every time like the Bengals did. So Cincinnati offensively on third down is 3rd in the National Football League, a little over 47.5%. Atlanta's just under 45%. They're 4th in the NFL. Third down, red zone execution is going to be masterful in determining the outcome of this football game. So let's talk about Atlanta's offense, how they've been in the red zone. Atlanta scored a red zone 2 out of every 3 possessions. They're scoring 66.7% of the time. They're scoring touchdowns in the red zone, 4th best in the NFL. Bengals defense, they're now allowing a touchdown in just 35.3% of their opportunities in the red zone, possessions against them in the red zone, with that 1 touchdown allowed in 5 red zone appearances last week. 3rd best in the National Football League. So you have the 4th best red zone team against the 3rd best red zone team. Atlanta's offense, Bengals defense. Going to be a big, big matchup in this game. Obviously, the running game is going to be a big, big factor in determining the outcome of this football game. Joe Mixon against Baltimore and New Orleans ran the ball for over 5.5 yards per carry. Now, would you like to see him even get more carries? Yeah, but his efficiency, his productivity of the carries that he's getting are much, much greater. There are no two ways about it. When you look at it, that Atlanta Falcons, very rare in today's NFL. They are running the football for 165.2 yards a game, 3rd best in the league. They're throwing it for 159.2, 30th in the league. Running it at a high level, not throwing it at a very high level. They're running the ball for 6 more yards per game than they're throwing it. Unheard of in today's NFL. They're averaging 4.9 per rush. Cincinnati's defense, after getting gashed last week for 228 yards, is allowing 4.7. The Saints had 3 straight runs in the second quarter, 44-yard touchdown on a sweep to the right, a 24-yard sweep to the left by Kamara, and then 31 yards up the middle by Hill. 99 yards on 3 carries, 33 yards per. Going to have to shut that down, play better gap control responsibility, and then tackle. Get people on the ground, sure tackling. Cincinnati was missing about 3 or 4 tackles a game going into last week's game against New Orleans. They missed 8 against the Saints, and those 8 missed tackles meant 80 yards on the rushing total that shouldn't have taken place. So you're going to have to play your gap control responsibility, get off blocks, and get people on the ground. That's simple. On the other side of things, sustain blocks, finish blocks, give Joe Mixon a chance to get past the line of scrimmage before he makes his first read and has to make his first cut. Could be a very good day for the Cincinnati Bengals if all that takes place. The magic number continues to be 25. 25 points scored. Since 2011, the Bengals are now 61 wins, 6 losses, and 2 ties when they score more than 25 points, 25 points or more. This year, they're 3-0. When they do it, they're 0-3 when they don't. That's the magic number, 25 points. It's been that way for a while. Let's see if the Bengals can exceed that 25-point mark against the Falcons. That's going to be big. Both teams have protected the football very well this season. Ball security has been at a premium. Both teams only have 8 giveaways. The difference is Atlanta has 8 takeaways, which makes them +2. They're tied for 7th best in the National Football League. The Bengals have 8 takeaways, 8 giveaways. They're dead even. So they're middle of the pack in the National Football League in terms of turnover differential. Turnovers are going to be huge, huge. They're going to determine the outcome of close football games. Both these football teams have been involved in close football games all season long. We know the Bengals situation. They've been in 1-score games, except their 2 victories. 3 of their losses and 1 win have been 1-score games. The other 2 victories have been 2-score games. Same with the Falcons. Falcons lost by a point to New Orleans, lost by 4 to the Rams. They win by 4 against Seattle, win by 3 against Cleveland, lose by 6 to Tampa Bay, and then they had a 2-score or more victory against the 49ers. Turnovers are going to be big because both teams' track record so far has shown that they're going to be in very, very close football games right down to the end. It's going to come down to the wire. Who's going to make the big play? Who's going to avoid the big mistake? That's life in the National Football League, and that's how both of these teams are performing right now. And it also boils down to discipline. I mean, the Bengals have been very, very disciplined football team. They've not self-destructed by penalty. Atlanta the same way. Falcons, 27 penalties, 4th fewest in the NFL. 209 yards, 4th fewest in the NFL. Bengals, 29 penalties, tied for 5th fewest in the league. 216 yards, 5th fewest in the NFL. Both of these teams do not self-destruct with crazy penalties. That's going to have, who's going to be the one that takes care of business in that regard? Make sure you keep your discipline, control yourself, no silly penalties. And then we come to special teams, which determines hidden yards more so than anything. A lot of times turnovers are obviously a huge factor in that regard, because you may have a big return of an interception or a fumble or whatever the case may be. But pretty much it's dictated by kicking game, the sway of field position. Who's going to go make the opponent go on long drives? Who's going to get some short drives for their football team? And that is usually determined by returns. So let's take a look at returns. The Falcons have Avery Williams. This guy's one of those guys, averaging 17.8 yards per punt return, best in the NFL. 24.8 yards per kickoff return would be top 5 if he had enough returns. A lot of kickers are just kicking the ball into or through the end zone on kickoffs, as we've seen. How about Trent Taylor with the Bengals? He's averaging 11.8 yards per punt return, 7th in the National Football League. Evans is averaging 25.5 yards per kickoff return. If he had enough returns, he'd be in the top 3 in the National Football League. The reason that both kick returners don't have enough, because like Evan McPherson, 26 touchbacks, number 1 in the NFL. Pinion, the punter, is also the kickoff guy for the Atlanta Falcons. He's got 22 touchbacks, tied for 7th in the NFL. Teams don't want to allow kickoff return guys to do their thing. They're burying the ball into the end zone and satisfied with the touchback at the 24-yard line. But hidden yards, who's going to have that advantage? If you have an advantage of, say, 10 yards per average drive start, hold the Falcons to the 23-yard line is their average drive start on 10 possessions. The Bengals get the ball at the 33-yard line, of their own 33-yard line, for 10 possessions. That 10-yard differential times 10 possessions is a football field of hidden yards. Those add up. Who's going to determine favorable field position? Who's going to pin the other team back? Big deal in a close football game. Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team. Opportunity knocking.